us this afternoon. We are going to be doing a Building Youth Leadership panel this afternoon, and we have some lovely people here to talk to you.
I have the honor of introducing our Building Youth Leadership panel. Combined, these fabulous young women have over 50 years of experience working with youth in Teen Institute programs. Teen Institutes are youth-inspired, youth-driven, and youth-led programs. And we have data that demonstrates that these programs make a positive impact on mental health, positive core values. They increase commitment to the community, and they increase participation in programs that prevent alcohol and other drug use. These programs obviously work, as these three ladies are all products of their programs. Today with us is Kim from the Long Island Teen Institute, and Jamie and Rachel from the Lindsay Meyer Teen Institute, which is in New Jersey. They are going to share how their programs help youth grow and learn. I give you Kim, Jamie, and Rachel.
Hi. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. Thanks for joining the retreat today and this very awesome presentation about building youth leadership. I'm going to ask both Rachel and Jamie to introduce themselves to you, and then we'll spend some great time together today.
Okay. My name is Rachel Taylor. I work as the assistant supervisor at the Lindsay Meyer Teen Institute. You might know us by our old name back from the early 90s, TIGS, the Teen Institute of the Garden State. And yeah, we do a bunch of stuff all throughout the state. We work with middle school, high school, college age students, a little bit of everything, and we're hoping to share all of that with you today. Jamie has texted me, she just had to restart her internet, so I think she might have either just joined or is in the process of joining, so she'll jump on with us in a second.
Fabulous. Awesome. Well, as we're waiting for Jamie to join, my name is Kim Laube. I'm the executive director of a program called HUGS, which is located on the end of Long Island. And we facilitate the Long Island Teen Institute and have the great honor of working with teen institutes all over the country. And even some of our programs make it across our international, our good friends in Illinois certainly work internationally with our Operation Snowball. While we're waiting for Jamie to come join us, let me just say that as I look at the list, I see other teen institutes from different parts of the country who are on today's call, and certainly we would encourage folks to identify themselves in the chat box, whether you're involved in Teen Institute or not, but let us know if you've ever worked with youth coalitions, where you are, and a little bit for us to kind of sink our teeth into and talk about as we move forward in today's panel presentation. We want you to walk away with some great tips on how to make your teen institutes or your youth summits or youth programs that much stronger. And I can attest to the value of Teen Institute because, as Marianne said in her introduction, I certainly am a product of our Teen Institute. And my journey into prevention, my journey into doing this work started when I was 15 years old and I attended my first conference back in 1980 something. And I'd love to say that I'm only 30, but I definitely have been doing this work for over 30 years. And I have a great group who does this work as well. As you can see, I saw Marianne Chapman from the Georgia Teen Institute pop in and say hello. I think I saw Nicole Rookie's name pop up there too. She's the Heart of New York Teen Institute. And it looks like we could admit Jamie into the group. So the folks who are on your panel today, Jamie, Rachel, myself, are just a small group that represents a large fabric of teen institutes across the country. And as you can see by the slide, there are teen institutes in many different states. And those are just some that you see organized up there and in the picture. You have the Long Island Teen Institute. You have the group that started Teen Institute well over, I think, 45, almost 50 years ago, the Ohio Teen Institute. Georgia has a Teen Institute, as mentioned, the Sabrin Goodman Teen Institute out of Illinois, and so many others, including our friends in New Hampshire. And so we cover from coast to coast a group that brings young people together, really teaches them about so many different things. The specifics that we teach them about are the SPIF and how to go about and bring forward community coalitions and how to be change makers, whether it's in their group of friends or in their school community or in the community in which they live. But it's about a group of young people working collectively with adults, but really letting it be youth-led, youth-driven, and youth-inspired to create that systemic change that we want to see happen in communities. And so teen institutes, although some of us look very different, we can share for us on Long Island, we're a small, what you would call a regional teen institute. And so we could have between 50 and 110 students and adults working together. We go out for a weekend. We do that multiple times a year. But some of our partner teen institutes like Lindsay Meyer, like Heart of New York, are much larger in stature. And so teen institutes could be upwards of 500 students and adults working together for 4 to 5 days out of a summer, and then they design all their programs that last them all throughout the year. So whether you work regionally like we do on Long Island and we have multiple weekends throughout the year, or you do a large conference with smaller conferences in between on the larger scale, the outcomes are very interesting in that they're very much the same. Our data is very reflective of long-term sustaining outcomes. Many of our teen institutes are run, again, by folks who've come up through the Teen Institute program and have developed their love for prevention and this work. And whether or not it is a group of 500 or a group of 50, some of the key things that young people always talk about was the opportunity to engage, to find their voice and to fine-tune their voice. For some, they will say it was the first time that they were heard, that their opinion was valued, or that their leadership was enhanced or strengthened, and that they really felt in an environment like that, that they could thrive and take on the world. And so we use these environments in these ways that young people come together and strengthen their voice, and then we send them off into their community where they're still continue to be given support so that they can follow through on their action plans. So on a personal level, a very personal level, it is life-changing for so many of us. For some of us, we began to find who we were through this experience. For some of us, we've chosen our careers. And for all of us, whether we're in Georgia or in Illinois or up in the Syracuse area, or of course our friends in New Jersey, we've used this as a platform to really be change makers in the community and to really begin to make the space better. What I love about this conversation today is that we actually have some data to talk about the good outcomes that we've gotten as a result of the work that we've done. So Youth Summit, Teen Institute, they're all very similar in nature. And I'm going to turn it over to my pals to New Jersey to, one, I think Jamie is fully in with us, to introduce herself and join in on us, and let's keep this conversation going.
Okay, yeah, hi everyone. You know, if there's one thing I've learned in the virtual world, as I'm sure many of you have, it's that the minute you need the internet, that is the moment the internet leaves you. And so in my house, I dealt with myself needing the internet, but also in order to be able to do this with you all without interruption from my children also needed the internet. So it was like a three-way panic, you know, but I'm back, it's okay, and we're here. So I guess I'm just sharing a little bit about myself, and then I think I'll turn it back over to Rachel so you can kind of like get back into the content here. But as I heard Kim talking about as I came on, so many of us have been involved with the Teen Institute program since we were in high school, and I am an example of that. I first got involved with what was then called the Teen Institute of the Garden State, or TIGS, in 1995, when I was just about to enter my sophomore year of high school. I always share that I was a reluctant alternative to the group. I wasn't really chosen. I was just an alternate rather. And then last minute, somebody got sick. And because of that, Lauren DeMayo, that was her name, because she got sick last minute, my entire life, took this direction, and I don't know where I'd be without it. So, it certainly framed who I am as a person and allowed me to make decisions both as a youth in the program, as a young adult, and as an older adult, that continue to resonate in my life, and not just because I work for the program, but because the values that I identified in myself, I was able to identify those pretty young and apply them throughout my life, and also learn so many different skills, and to be kind of in this environment where I was accepted for exactly who I was. And I think that that's so pivotal for high school students to have that experience, because they go from like carefree kids who feel as though they can take on the world and they have the confidence, and all of a sudden middle school happens and things kind of get shaken up for them. And then I think Teen Institute kind of gives this pause where high school students are invited to stop for a second and like put a pause to all that pressure that floats around them, school, family, friends, whatever it is, pressure to drink or not drink, and what are you going to do after high school. And it just gives them this opportunity to look inward and say, okay, like, what's important to me, what kind of decisions am I making, and what are the things that about me that are inherently leadership skills, because so often we don't think of leadership in the way that I think we maybe should. And so Teen Institute gives them that pause, and we'll talk a little bit more about what we think happens, I think, during that experience. I'll never forget coming back from Teen Institute, and my parents were just like, what? Like no matter how much I tried to explain it, it was very hard to put into words. And I think that's something that if you've been involved with a program that deeply impacts you, you know what that's like. It's very hard to put into words. So we've worked at the national level and in our own, kind of statewide and regional programs to really put language and data to that experience, and working closely now with Epiphany to help us kind of drive that. So we're happy to share more about what that is all about. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Rachel, and she's going to take it away.
Cool. So now that you know who we are and what a Teen Institute is, let's just tell you the goals for this session. Who loves a clear objective? I do. So we want you to be able to understand the importance of the youth role in prevention programs, right? What that looks like. That's why we're here, right? We want to build youth leaders, learn some new theories about youth leadership, and be prepared to guide youth to realize their leadership potential. So we'll be doing this. We've got a bunch of slides, but we'll be able to take some breaks to get you guys involved, talk about things, have some discussion. So it's not just us talking the whole time at you. If at any point though you do have questions, like I said in the beginning, type it in the chat. I was on a Zoom earlier with 160 people trying to teach something. This is much more, I like this. This is like a campfire now at this point. So we can all just chat, drop in any questions or comments. So we've got to start by answering a very important question. What is a leader? There's so many definitions. Experts can't agree on it. So let's see if we can get a working definition for this group. So I'll ask you to take a second. We're going to do something called a super chat. We learned this from the Georgia Teen Institute. We love to share this network of TIs. So what we're going to have you do, don't hit send. Do not hit send. Whatever you do, do not hit send in the chat box. But I want you to type, oh, and you learned it from Camp For You. Okay, well, we're sharing the super chat. So I'm going to ask you a question. What is a leader? Type your answer, but don't hit send until I say so. So take a second, think on that. All right. 3, 2, 1, hit send. Ooh, beautiful answers coming in. Oh my goodness, hardworking, caring, someone that challenges and inspires others, someone who's able to effectively communicate, thoughtful, good listener, kind, fosters success for those who are following them, stands up for what is right and just. I love that, Katie Jackson. Makes decisions. A leader is someone who listens, allows others to discover their own potential, sets a positive example, confident, compassion. Eileen here, a person who leads a group, agency, organization, etc. Yes, I'm loving all of these answers, and they are all so true. We have a very broad definition here. A person who uses skills to help a group identify and achieve its goals. I think everything we've said is correct because leaders can look so many different ways. We have, all these kind of traits and characteristics that make somebody in a good is relative, right? Leader, all positive influence, being respectful, being honest. So many different powerful words here. But when we talk with our students, we like to break those down even further because what does it mean to be confident? What does it mean to be a good listener? What does it mean to be strategic? So when we talk about this with our students, we always break it down into doing and saying. I think that's really important to have these tangible things to teach students, because we hear it all the time, you know, oh, be courteous, be respectful, but you gotta tell me what that means. Show me the actions. Lead by example. I want to take all of that in. I'm a sponge. Teach me, please. So I think that's really important as we begin this discussion about leadership. I love a metaphor. Leadership is a toolbox. You know, we talk about it a bunch of different ways. Leadership is a pizza sometimes. It can be so many different things, right? But the idea of leadership as a toolbox is important. We have all these skills that, you know, you're learning through retreats such as this one, that you've learned through experience, that you learned through your schooling. All of these skills and experiences, we just kind of catalog them and toss them into our toolbox, right? And different tools can accomplish different things. I know the expression of, you know, every problem's a nail if all you have is a hammer, but you have more than a hammer. You have so many things in your toolbox. And if you think you don't, you're going to get some today. So trust me, you do. There's a lot of methods to getting a job done. You can see right there, 2 + 2 is 4, but so is 3 + 1. You know, through the framework and examples we give today, I hope that you're able to take and apply, you know, different parts of it to whatever you're working with your students on, because there's a lot of ways to get things done. And especially in this digital world where, you know, there's no clear-cut path for a lot of things, finding, you know, what skills you have, what skills your students have, and making them work for the situation. So leadership is a toolbox. A couple of things we're gonna touch on here as we talk about leadership. So leadership can be learned, right? If not, why are we all here right now? Jamie always likes to talk about, you know, when babies are born, we don't say, oh, that's a natural born fill in the job, a natural born electrician, a natural born plumber, a natural born whatever the job is. So why do we say that about leadership? Leadership, just like any job, any task, is something that we constantly work at, right? We're constantly going to trainings, honing our craft, you know, evaluating what we're doing to improve. So just like anything, it's something we work at. So some terms to avoid when talking about leadership: natural leaders, born leaders, effortless. We may make it look effortless, let me tell you, but it's work, right? We put together this presentation beforehand. We had our Google Meet. We talked about who's going to do what. There's, you know, there's work behind everything. And my chat box is covering up the last part. Oh, gifted, right? So, you know, certainly people might be predisposed to certain characteristics, and that could be, you know, the place that they grew up in has influenced them in that way, or the socioeconomic bracket that they're in has given them more opportunities. But that, you know, that's all just things to consider when we're talking about this. So it can be taught. Leadership, 1000% can be taught. And we're going to show you a couple of theories. Oh, Jamie stole that from Michael Brandwein. Yes, I love the resource in there. If you have never heard of him, definitely check out his website. He is an awesome trainer. He has a bunch of books for training teams, a lot of camp materials, which we love. We stand Michael Brandwein. So tons of theories here. Like a billion approximately. If you do a Google search about leadership theory, you will have so many pages. So there's the great man theory, and that's just leadership is inherent, and you know, we're just born with it. And SME are just born with it. That should say some, sorry about that. SME, who knows, he might be born with it. Charismatic leadership theory. Leaders have to have these extraordinary qualities to be an effective leader, which, you know, the leaders that we work with are extraordinary, but they might look different ways. We have our on the stage leaders, but we also have our behind the scenes leaders who do just as much to work with the group, influence the group. One of my coworker, Corey, likes to say that, you know, not everybody's a Beyonce, and that's okay. You know, you got to have a job for Kelly Rowland too. She's important. She's over there. Whoever else is in Destiny's Child, I don't remember. There's only one other person. I really should have looked that up. But there's different types of people, and they're going to act as leaders differently, and that's good. But you can see so many different ways. We even have a theory, because who doesn't? That's how many there are. We have, this is LMTI's core leadership skills, what we believe in. So planning, creativity, persistence, initiative, problem solving, listening, respect, responsibility, observation, teamwork, presenting, and motivation. Again, borrowed from the lovely Michael Brandwine. So what we want to talk about today, there's so many, but the one that a lot of teen institutes like to use, and a lot of people like to use, comes from the Search Institute. If you're not familiar, definitely check them out, search-institute.org. So the developmental relationship framework, this is where developmental relationships are the connections you make with students, right? Thank you, Jamie, for the link. And relationships matter, you know. Our relationships with youth are the foundation for everything. That's, you know, how engaged they're going to be, how much they'll take away from the situation. And when thinking about youth engagement and leadership and all these other things, we might just be thinking, okay, how do we teach? How do we teach? How do we teach? But these foundational relationship building elements are so important to get them to the table, to have them feel, you know, safe and supported, and be able to open up to expand their possibilities. So this framework, let me tell you a little bit about relationships before I introduce the framework. I have the slides right next to me, but for some reason I'm not looking at the next one that's coming. Who knows? So this is from the Search Institute's website here. Young people who experience strong developmental relationships are more likely to report a wide range of social, emotional strengths and other indicators of well-being and thriving. They're more resilient in the face of stress and trauma. How important right now, right? Like, I mean, we feel it as adults, they feel it as students too. Young people do better when they experience a strong web of relationships with many people. So if we build relationships, we can build leaders. I'm going to toss it to Jamie, who's going to go over these 5 different frameworks. We've got expressing care, challenging growth, providing support, expanding possibilities, and sharing power.
All right, can everybody hear me? Okay, cool. So thank you, Rachel. And like we mentioned in the beginning, this is we know this is a lot of like theory and stuff, and we definitely want to leave some time just to chat and talk to you all about kind of how you see youth being involved in what you've got going on, whether that's a coalition, whether that's a youth task force, whether you've worked with youth forever, whether you've never worked with youth before. I definitely think that through our Teen Institute experience, we have a lot of different insights, you know, on how we've seen the benefit of youth in youth programs, but also as a piece of our puzzle when we're doing community-based work as well. So I think, as Rachel was kind of talking about, and I have so many windows open, and so I'm like the worst with, I don't know, I was always bad before the virtual world became upon us with having too many windows open, as my staff can attest to, and now that it's here, it's like 10 times worse than it ever was because there's always too many things. So I'm trying to just move things around so I can see my notes. I think I'm at the point where I need to shift to one of those 2 computer setups. I don't know. I think it's probably time. So getting into the importance of relationships. I think when we're talking about youth and we're talking about adults and how they can kind of work together, there's so much importance in relationship. I mean, I think when you think about any positive experience that a youth has, and I'm going to talk specifically about high school because that's the main age that we work with, but I definitely think it applies to any age of youth, and really to adults as well. There is so much that comes from connection with other people, and the youth that we work with today specifically, you know, because of how connected they are, sometimes there is this assumption that because they're connected, meaning that they're on their devices and they're able to very quickly get information they need, and they're very easily able to send a snap to one of their friends and get information so quickly that they are having meaningful connections, and that's not always the case. And I think that this COVID-19 situation has illustrated that, unfortunately, so perfectly, because we've seen youth who are so connected, have their devices, can still stay in touch. But we've seen, I think all in our communities, the way that mental health has really taken a hit for our youth, just because that connection isn't there. That peer-to-peer connection hasn't been there. And also the positive adult connection hasn't been there. And I've seen that in my own, my own children. And I'll just share with you, I have 4 children. They span all of the ages. They go from age 4. I have a 6-year-old, and then I have 2 17-year-olds. So we got all the ages. And I'll say that my 17-year-old son in particular, who has some learning disabilities, and so the virtual world is like a huge struggle to begin with, but not being in a school building for him has really been difficult, because I don't think he ever realized how much value there was just from interacting with positive adults. Even though he doesn't like school, and he'll be the first to tell you he hates school because of how much of a struggle it is for him, just being around adults who believe in him and can encourage him and having that guidance is something that he's been lacking. I mean, we do as best as we can as parents, as those who are on here know, but this is not the age where youth are really looking to us all the time for advice and guidance. So I just think that you cannot underestimate the value of relationships with youth, no matter what your role is in their life. And so the first thing that is up here is expressing care. And I think that's pretty standard for all of our relationships, right? The more we feel as though we're valued, the more we get from it and the more you get from it. So the things that are up here are pretty straightforward. But when you're working with youth, you really want to make sure that they know that they can trust you. Youth are very smart, they are very perceptive, and they're very quick to let you know when you've let them down. And, I think that when you're stepping into a role as being an adult who's going to work with youth, you have a real responsibility to follow through for them, because they're giving you that trust and you have to give it back. So if you are somebody who's looking at bringing youth into the fold, into your coalition or your task force or whatever that looks like, I would say make sure you're really ready to commit to them, because they, just like any other adult, they don't take kindly to being told that you're going to show up for them and then, you don't do that. So you really have to make sure that you have the capacity, just like we do when we talk about all of our coalition building. Do you have the capacity to bring youth into the fold? That's something you definitely have to figure out. And sometimes that's identifying like who is the best person in your coalition or on your staff or in your community to work with youth, because while I think everybody has the potential to learn this, and like we're talking about learning leadership, there are definitely people who want to work with youth, and there are people who maybe that's not their lane, and that's okay. So identifying the people who really can be in this for the long haul, I think is important. I think too, hold on, let me just pull up, I got 2 slides going on here. I think too, when you're talking about expressing care for youth, you really have to pay attention to how you're expressing that, right? Like, so not every youth learns the same way. So making sure that youth that you are working with their needs are being met, whether they are somebody who learns visually by looking at things, whether they're somebody who learns by hearing things, like all this stuff plays into making sure that youth feel valued and they feel as though, this space is being created for them. And then by them, but also since you're an adult that's guiding them in the process, it's really about setting that foundation. One thing that I think is super important in the expressing care kind of category is developing traditions. So we have what we call action groups, and I think that word has probably come up before in this session. And what those are groups of individuals who are from the same community or school who attend one of our Teen Institute conferences, together. And one of the things that I've seen really help groups be successful when they want to do prevention work is that they also kind of institutionalize the group in such a way that there are yearly traditions that are just part of the fabric of their like kind of action group family. I'm thinking of one off the top of my head. Garfield High School in New Jersey every year has this huge Thanksgiving dinner that they do just with their group, and it's something that gives them a chance to just celebrate, be together, and it's something they all look forward to every year. So it doesn't always even have to always be about the work. In fact, a lot of times, as we know from like doing our own prevention work, sometimes we all need that opportunity to, to celebrate and take a break. So youth are also like that as well. one thing I want to say too on this topic, and I think this is a really important one, is that youth, especially high school students, are in this very kind of limbo phase of their life, right? They desperately want you to treat them like adults, but at the same time, they really need permission to still act like kids because they are kids, you know? So there's this balance of letting them have power and letting them do things, not just because it's, you know, it's the right thing to do, but because you trust them and because you're giving them that autonomy. But you also need to give them permission to act like kids. So you kind of have to be, I don't know, you have to like set your bar in the right place and be able to adjust it. And sometimes I think what goes a long way is adults not being afraid to act silly, you know, in the realm of this. And I think all of our teen institutes can attest to that. You know, example of New Jersey, something that we do that is so silly that makes no sense. And if anybody walks up to us, you would have no idea what was going on, but sure is fun as we do this thing called the hamster dance, right? And like we play this really loud song. Later you can look on YouTube and find the hamster dance, and you know, maybe you can come up with some new variations, but makes no sense to outsiders. But when the hamster dance comes on, it's not just our youth that do it, our adults do it too. And it's not because we feel like we have to do it, but we've created this community where like it's okay to be silly, you know, like, and when we kind of like give ourselves as adults permission to do that, we give that permission to our youth as well. So it's just something to kind of like think about as you're working with youth, is giving them that opportunity to be adults but also be children. So challenging youth is so important. And I think just by being a part of Teen Institute groups or youth task force or whatever club or activity you have, there's always so many opportunities to challenge youth. They need to be challenged in order to grow. I also should mention we have kind of these little Instagram things on the side there, which are just, we kind of pulled some of the youth that we worked with and asked them what they found to be the most effective or the best qualities or things that they really appreciate about the adults that they work with. And these are just some of the things too that they've kind of shared with us, which I think are just great examples of kind of seeing this in action. But the challenge growth one is so important because we can't just, when we talk about youth leadership, we can't just, you know, give youth like a chair at the table because that's what we're supposed to do, right? Okay, so a lot of you, I'm sure, are part of coalitions and you have a list. You got to get somebody from this sector. You got to get from this sector. You got to get this sector. Youth is on there. You got to get that sector. So we have to move beyond like making it just about checking that box, bringing the chair to the table, because you're just, when you don't engage youth fully, you're missing out on such a valuable opportunity, and that's for them, and that's for you and your coalition and the group that you're working with. And so challenging youth is really important. It's again, being able to move that bar of expectations up and down, but not being afraid to like push it up a little bit, because youth, especially high school students, have the capacity to do so much. They know so much. They are experts in their field. Rachel, I don't know if you said that earlier in this presentation or if you said it in the one that I was listening to earlier. At this point, there's been so many, I don't know, but think about it. Youth are experts in their field of being a youth. Nobody knows more about being a youth than youth, right? And we as adults, we think we know about being a youth, but we don't. We know about being a youth when we were youth. That is very different. Me as a 15-year-old kid in 1995, listening to Nirvana, watching my so-called life, wearing my plaid flannel, like that's very different than my 17-year-olds today. Like that what I just said to them would be so embarrassing to them, except maybe maybe the flannel is coming back a little bit. I'm a little excited about that possibility, but I just don't know what it's like to be a youth today because the circumstances are so different. The world is so different, right? So we have to, you know, make sure that we adjust accordingly. And so challenging youth is one of the best things that we can do. And I love this idea of challenge because when you think about, I don't know if anyone has ever heard of the Biosphere project, Biosphere 2. It was a research experiment that was created in Arizona. And basically it recreated the Earth's ecosystem, but inside. They just wanted to see if they could simulate all of the growth aspects of outdoors but indoors, and it still exists. I had no idea until I started like really researching resiliency and challenge and change. And what they found is that trees in particular, they grew faster indoors than they did outdoors, but what would happen is they would collapse under their own weight. And the reason why is because trees that are outside develop what's called stress wood from bending in the breeze, and they need that stress wood to be able to, you know, to go back and forth and to withstand what the winds that come their way. Youth are the same way. If we just give them all of the answers and we tell them what to do, they don't develop their own stress wood. They don't develop that resiliency. So when we're working with youth in these capacities, we have so many opportunities to help them grow. So, you know, just keep that in mind as you're going through it. And I think some of those things are like when we talk about these adult only topics, right? Oh, like the SPIF and the, you know, CADCA's 7 strategies for change and coalitions and all of these things that probably we think maybe that's not that exciting for youth. Sometimes maybe it's not that exciting for adults. I'm just saying, you know, no offense to anyone who absolutely loves all the theory, but we can make it appropriate for youth. We can get them excited by being excited about it ourselves. We can make it age appropriate for them. I once made an entire logic model. Logic model fans out there, I know you're out there. I'm not one of them. You know, like I am not a logic model fan. I know it's a very divisive topic, but I once made a logic model all about Oreos and how I feel that Oreos have changed over time. And I feel like I've been deceived by the Nabisco company because a double stuff is not what it used to be. I think that a double stuff is now like a regular Oreo, and a regular Oreo is even less. And so I wrote a whole logic model about why I think this is, and that was a way that I was able to pull in these youth and help them understand this topic of logic models, which, you know, is not the most interesting thing for some. So there's always ways to get youth excited and to challenge them, give them opportunities to do stuff, because most times you'll find that they are really ready to do it. Providing support. So I have another presentation that has my actual Oreo logic model up, and I'm just you know, looking at all of my slides, so just bear with me as I scroll through them. Where is my providing support? There it is. So when we talk about providing support, this one is pretty straightforward. Rachel talked a lot about this earlier. You know, when we're talking about leadership skills, providing youth with opportunities to practice those skills is a way to provide support. It's not just saying we're going to do these trainings and now go off and do it. We're going to give you ways that you can practice this and help you achieve the goals that you have. It's not about like saying youth, here's the information, go do it. It's a little bit about that, but it's also saying, here's the information, go do it, and we're going to be here to guide you in that process and make sure like that if you hit a door that's closed, we can take a step back and strategize about how we need to open the door, because youth need that. In order for youth programs to be really successful, they need to have committed adults who believe in youth and who are there to kind of help them troubleshoot those roadblocks. Sometimes it's just because they haven't had that experience yet, and so having an experienced adult, they kind of helps them through that. Sometimes it's just because you meet challenges in the world of prevention, as you all know from working in this field, that sometimes you hit a roadblock and youth maybe don't have the experience yet or the connections yet or the whatever yet to do it. So you adults really can help guide them in that right direction when needed. You know, and I think everything else that's there is super important as well. I don't want to keep talking too long because I know we also have to do some more just open discussion stuff, but as you can see, any of us could talk for like hours on all of these topics. So I will just keep going through. Sharing the power, super important, because again, this goes to youth being ready to take on these responsibilities. It's not just obligatory, like, you know, I'm gonna give you this because I have to give you something. It's looking at the strengths of your group, building up those strengths of the group and saying, okay, you are so good, Rachel, at, you know, at coming up with icebreakers and making things that usually work in the space of in person. You're so good at doing it virtually. So I'm going to give this to you, run with it. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to let you come to me if you need any help, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to really develop this. So one, it helps our group run. It's one less thing I have to do as an adult. And also it helps Rachel develop those skills. So it's like developing skills as you're going. There's always something that can be contributed to by the youth that you're working with. I also think like this is the sort of stuff, the sharing power that, I mean, if you had an experience when you were in high school and you worked in anything, I'm sure you can think back to a time where a teacher trusted you with something, or an adult trusted you to do something, and what that felt like. You know, I don't think you can, those are opportunities that youth carry on with them in their lives. And the more often we can give them those opportunities to build their confidence, and not just in what we've, like, I think we generally view as like these traditional leadership things, right? We usually think, oh, leaders are people who are up on stage and they empower us and they inspire us. And that's very true. That is a part of leadership. But leadership is also the people who do that behind the scenes work. But leadership is also being a good listener. Leadership is also being somebody who is really good at, laying out the steps of what you have to do in an action plan. Leadership can also be about somebody who really likes to do computer work. It doesn't have to be this kind of cookie cutter image of what we think of as leadership. And so with Teen Institute, what we're really trying to do is give youth opportunities to take the talents and skills they have now, develop those, and also add more to that toolkit that Rachel talked about earlier. So whenever you have an opportunity to share the power with youth, it's the best thing. It's win-win, because it's them practicing those skills, less on your plate, and it helps that group of youth become more autonomous. The more you work with a group of youth like this, the less they need you. Again, they need you for the guidance. They need you to, open the doors here and there. But if you can get a group where you're sharing the power pretty consistently, they can get to a point where they don't even need, your input. We've seen some really successful groups like that. And this is just with anything. I think one thing that's really cool about Teen Institute is that it allows youth to have opportunities beyond just their community. So at the first level, if a youth goes to something like Teen Institute, wow, they're getting this opportunity to interact with youth from all throughout the state or all throughout the county or wherever it's held. So that in itself is just a powerful experience, because anytime we can bring people together from different places, conversation is going to happen. Thought is going to happen, reflection is going to happen, and ultimately, hopefully, action and change are going to happen. And Teen Institute are so much about providing those opportunities. So a cool thing about Teen Institutes then is that we take it to the next level. Okay, so now you had this experience where you worked in your community. Okay, now if you want, come apply to be part of our state board, and you can do this at the statewide level. Now, this is also a national organization. You want to come be a part of the national organization? There's always these opportunities to kind of expand upon what they're doing. And so again, anytime adults can enter into the life of a youth, build a positive relationship, open those doors, share the power, give them opportunities to grow, it's just win-win for everyone. Yep, and I'm just gonna flip through that. You can read that, yeah. But that's all I've been saying.
Yeah, just take it in, screenshot it. It's all the stuff.
Jamie's been talking for a long time, and I realize it's happening. So I'm gonna slowly quiet down and let my my other panelists join in the conversation here, so that I can take a sip of water.
So it's all about taking everything that we just talked about and building that into your program, keeping it fun, engaging, and relevant. So now we pause for a second, and because again, we've been talking a lot, so let's have this conversation here. How do we do that? What do fellow panelists, fellow audience members, what do we think? What does implementing these ideas look like? What can I do with my organization? If you have a specific question.
If you would like to unmute yourself and ask the panelists or comment on this, feel free, or you can put something in the chat.
Well, the good news is we're going to tell you in a second. So, I mean, maybe you...
Am I still? Oh, you know what I would love to do, Rachel? If Marianne wouldn't mind, I would love to put Marianne on the spot just for a second, because Marianne has had this awesome opportunity of visiting so many of our teen institutes in the last year. Marianne is kind of our main evaluator that we've been working from Epiphany as we've been trying to gather data from all of the different teen institutes and see what are these commonalities and see kind of how can we showcase how these programs are working. And I see the question right there is how has ECS evaluated your initiative? So I think that's a good opportunity to kind of maybe bring Marianne into the conversation a little to talk about that.
So do you want me to answer the how do I do that? Because I have had the opportunity to observe your programs and have seen some amazing programming happening at the LITI. I really think you should have all witnessed this intense team building leadership opportunity where they simulated a shipwreck. And Kim set it up so perfectly about being on this ship, and then the different groups had to do different activities, and including like getting off the ship, and oh, they had just so many cool things that they got to do. And at the end, they gathered in a room which they had prepared with fog and cold to make it look like you were floating on the water and you were writing a note. It was like there was a piece of paper and you have one moment to write a note and share your thoughts, and just so powerful. There's so many different powerful activities that they do. And we measured that pre, post, and 90 days or so past that. We look at positive core values. We look at leadership skills, communication, working together as a team. And then we also look at prevention, substance abuse, and then also action planning. And we have found statistically significant results, you know, changes that can be attributed to being part of the program. Anything more there?
Cool. I just saw in the chat that Katie has thought about funding to send a group of youth and adult mentors to the Ohio Teen Institute event to create interest in starting a teen institute in our county. And I love that, because the cool thing about teen institutes is that we can replicate them, you know, like that's the thing. Is I think it was said earlier is that they are all so vastly different, but they have this core commonality. So you can take this core and really make it work wherever you are. You know, we've seen that over and over again. One of the cool things about being involved for so many years is we've had the opportunity to kind of visit back and forth, you know, amongst our TIs. And I think one thing our staff always say is, wow, it was so different, but it was the same, but it was so different. But you know, that core is still there.
Trust me, I have seen several, and they are different but similar. You all have the small group focus, the large group focus, the team building. You have the LMTI Thursday night program. It just makes kids think about what they've been doing and how they're going to take what they learned and move forward. They just, and then they celebrate and have a dance like the New Year. So just so many similar but different aspects.
Speaking to honor what Jamie said and what Rachel have said, it certainly is about creating leadership opportunities within a system, within a weekend. And for some young people, that's where they'll stay. They'll stay for that leadership in a weekend. For others, it's about developing that leadership that lasts them a lifetime and will carry out at the college, at the field, at in the high school play, that wherever it is, we find that there's this theme amongst our students that they're a little bit more willing to take some risks or put themselves out there or help organize or put voice to, and both anecdotally and now through the work we're doing with the epiphany. We're beginning to find out that, there's actually some science behind why that's happening. And we're matching the theories with the practice, and the outcomes that we're getting are beyond what we individually know, but collectively, the impact that it's having in all areas. And that starts at that base of where we're nurturing this leadership plant, where it's beginning to grow. And with everybody bringing their best stuff to the table, we're able to create that safety in that environment. And whether it's allowing people to be silly and playful, or allowing them to plan and to shine, or to, even during this COVID time, turning our social media over to our young people, to really not just to our youth, not just saying, we value you and we want to hear what you say. We actually give them the steering wheel. And that opportunity for them to take the steering wheel, they're going to drive us, and have driven us, in directions we didn't even think possible. And what I want to answer quickly is some of the questions about teen institutes in your area, and some operate on significant, are well funded, and some of us aren't, and we find a way to still make the magic happen. And so if you can send a team, whether it's to Ohio or to New Jersey or to Georgia, or New Hampshire, to really take that investment. What we find is that our program for us on Long Island, we started because a guidance counselor brought a group of kids out to Illinois, and they enjoyed their experience there so much. And this was back in the early 80s, that they said, hey, we're not coming back to New York until you start a program in New York. So when we say youth inspired, youth driven, it really does come down to that. Our program exists because our youth said, we want this program here. And so if you're in a position to check out a teen institute or bring a group of young people, the long-term impact that they have may go beyond just a road trip that you're experiencing.
And speaking of that long-term impact, we've also had the opportunity to look at alumni, and the alumni are less likely to use alcohol and other drugs, and more likely to understand how other people feel and think, and they're more likely to think positive about themselves and seek out opportunities to learn new things. So it has a much longer impact than you can imagine.
I'm seeing a question in the chat now. What from Howard? What or how is the best way to train adult leaders in the development? Wow, DRF, developmental relationship framework. I got it there. Any thoughts on this?
I can add that I think that anytime we are going to do an adult training, for the most part, we always try to do it in like almost the very similar way we would do it with the youth, so that they get a sense of, how it can really work. So, I think that changes a little bit now that we are virtual, and a lot of what we're doing now is focusing on like, how can we still make sure all of this is still happening even virtually? So, when we talk about training them, I think it's just giving them those opportunities to kind of like practice what those kind of pillars of the framework are, but also give them opportunities to show how you would teach it to youth. So it's like kind of hand in hand, that you're doing it, but also giving them really good examples of how it actually works with youth.
Yeah, I think at LMTI, we have just finished up a second round of a very long document of digital icebreakers, games, activities, and stuff like that we can definitely share, whether it's through emailing or putting it up on our website. But I think a lot of those activities would be really good teachable moments, like Jamie was saying, the activities that you would just teach your youth and in there. So there's stuff about, comfort zones and stuff about finding commonalities and things like that directly align with each of these elements of the framework.
I think too, Search Institute offers a lot of different trainings. You know, I'm not sure what anybody's budgets are, and they're always really good. They're always really relatable, but that content is always available too. So I love this framework because of how relatable it is. I think it can apply to just about anything. Again, I think it's about just making it as relatable as possible. And as you go through kind of the pieces of the framework, you find so many different connections. Like, oh, this is so similar to like how I felt about this teacher, or, you know, just finding those opportunities for adults to connect with the different parts, even if they don't necessarily think of themselves as an adult who works with youth, they were at some point a youth. So even kind of connecting them back to how they perceived adults when they were younger versus, you know, how they interact with adults, with youth now, kind of to connect those dots too helps.
So being mindful of time, I see it as 3 o'clock now. I don't know. We have some more slides, but then we also have some more time for questions. Whoever is speaking next, just direct me how fast you want me to click through slides.
Hey, I can take myself off of mute. So you can actually fast forward, because I do want to respect people's time and find out what, you know, if there are any questions that people want us to address. One of the things that I would certainly talk about is the value of being role models in Teen Institute, and not only for us asking our young people to be role models and what does that look like, but for us to do the same role modeling as well. And we want to make sure that we recognize the power that being leaders and being seen as leaders has, and all that goes along with it. And what we always want to do is role model good behavior about not being elite leaders, to make sure that we are creating, whether it's our adults or our student leader staff, or whatever those terms may be, that it's really about leadership that is of servant leadership. So oftentimes in our program, you know, you can find me with a broom in my hand or washing dishes, and really allowing, not only showing that young people that I want them to do that I do that right along with them. And you will see any one of our teammates do that at any given time. You'll see them engaged in behaviors where they are helping lift you up, and they're always learning too, and they stay accountable to themselves and to their team. And we always want to make sure in our role modeling that we're fostering a collaborative environment, that it's not just about, let me make my action plan, you know, come out with all sorts of great outcomes, that it's really about, how can I help design action plans and work with a team from a different community or a different school, and how can we really share our ideas, whether it's about our personal growth, it's about our leadership, it's about our action plans. It's really about how we all can come together and add a piece to that pie that Jamie was talking about earlier, that we all can be of contribution. And when we all show up in that way, we really begin to make a long-standing difference in the work that we're doing and the legacy that it gets to leave. So we would definitely always want to end that, whether it's in Teen Institute or our youth councils or our youth programs or even our own agencies, that really that value that we want to place on role modeling behavior and role modeling leadership is really something that has a domino effect and a ripple effect that goes on and on longer than we'll ever get a chance to see, and in some cases even evaluate.
Okay, I think this is the last question we have for each other before we go to any final questions for you guys. But Jamie and Kim, and everybody here, if you want to type in the chat too, I want to know, what do you think makes your youth program impactful? I thought about this, so I can go first if you want me to. Because I also, just like Kim and Jamie, have come up through the program, and it is so hard to put into words what makes it so impactful. But I really think it really does come down to these relationships, feeling like I was heard for the first time, and it was okay to make a mistake because I knew that the people who were around me were supporting me, and I could try something new, and if it didn't work for me, that's fine. You know, it's about experience and just I don't know. I'm saying way too many things. I think I should have had a more polished thought before saying this, but that's because it's just impossible. This is why we need Epiphany. We need the data, because when we try to talk about it, it comes out sounding like this. But I'm gonna say the support and the relationships to me. What about you guys?
That's such a tough one, and I agree too. That's why the data definitely becomes our friend in this conversation. I think I love the idea of it being youth-led, right? That is something that is at the heart of this work. And the other thing that I think is just because there are lots of youth-led programs out there, right? I think it was the sense when I got there that I felt home, that I felt perhaps safe for the first time that I had ever known those two words to have felt those two words. So I don't ever want to underestimate the safe environment we've created in Teen Institute.
I'll just add, and those are both, I think, perfect. And I'm seeing so many amazing things in the chat from different teen institutes, but also just youth programs. And I love to see that commonality, because that's what we're talking about, is that there's such a, when we do good youth programming, we know there's that common core of what makes it so valuable for youth, and for us as adults who work with youth. But for me, I think, and I mentioned it earlier, that I think, I've seen it a lot. I saw it in myself, and I see it in a lot of youth that, that have come through the program over the years, is that I think there's this tendency as kids get older, for a lot of different reasons, for them to lose their ability to feel confident, or lose their ability to feel joy in things that used to bring them joy, for whatever reason, because they've been hurt, or because they've been shot down, or someone told them they weren't good enough, or I always think about this. This is such a silly little example on myself, but I can remember, I used to love to draw when I was little, and I used to love to do art, and I know as an adult that I'm not the best drawer or artist out there, but I see now my 6-year-old loves it too, and she just has this freedom and this just joy that comes in it. It's such a good tool for her as well, to help her emotionally regulate. So many positive things come from art, but I was at a certain point told that I was not good at art, because I wasn't in this elite art program that you got selected to. And I just think about how that pushed that joy out of me, And I think when I went to Teen Institute, it was the first time in a really long time that I allowed some of the things that I used to feel joy for to kind of resurface. And not only did I let them resurface, there were adults telling me, wow, that's great, keep doing those things. And there were peers around me who were saying, wow, that's great, keep doing those things, And when you have that connects back into those relationships. And when you have that kind of environment where it's just, you're given the opportunity to authentically be who you are, and you're supported and you're celebrated, and then on top of it, it's yes, take all those things you are, and now go make positive changes in your community with other people who are also celebrated for who they are. I just think that becomes such a powerful thing, and that's for me what makes youth programs so impactful.
And Jamie touched on it, and we're both at that age, we're fortunate. We both run programs that we're proud to have our own children be part of. And I love that both of my children have come up through Teen Institute. And I love when I get other kids people who I went to Teen Institute with, their children come up through Teen Institute, and it just shows that long-lasting legacy that gets to happen. It's definitely, I would totally love to send my kids to another Teen Institute, because I feel like it's sending them to an aunt's house, right? They're going to get the same basic core values. The furniture is going to look a little different, but the essence of home is certainly there.
I'm not crying, you're crying. I love all of this. And there's so many good things in the chat too.
There was a question in the chat. What are the most often experienced challenges to developing and maintaining a youth leadership group?
I have a lot of things to say about that one. I think we all do. I honestly believe that one of the number one roadblocks that I have seen is not having a committed adult to work with the
Yes.
group. We see time and time again that a community will send youth to, they have funding. They, like they manage to find funding for youth. So they send a small team of 3 or 4 youth, and they can't get an adult to commit to come because it's in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, at the end of summer vacation. And so we don't turn anyone away. So we say, okay, that group can come, and we'll put one of our volunteers with them to help them action plan and to get them through the week. And then what happens is youth go back so energized and so excited, and it's like they spin their wheels because they don't have that adult guiding them and opening those doors. So for me, like, I cannot stress the importance of having an adult who is ready to take on the the commitment too.
Right. And I want to, Colleen has in the chat, talks about, being very involved in working around their schedules. I would agree. An adult, I would agree, their schedules could become very challenging because oftentimes these are, they're out living lives and powerful lives. And that's exactly what we want. And then we teach them self-care, and then sometimes they create boundaries as a result. We want them using their self-care and creating boundaries. And that also means that sometimes they have to take time for them, and their schedules are quite challenging.
We do have a couple of resources in here, and then I'll put up the last thing for questions. But just a reminder that y'all got this. We're gonna send those icebreakers to you. These are all the resources we used for the slides. And when you get these slides also, there's 2 sample activities that you can do. If you are peeking around the Search Institute website, which I highly recommend you do, in addition to the developmental relation framework, they also have the 40 developmental assets. I love the word developmental. It's very hard for me to say. I don't know why. And there's a lot of great science behind that. They also have different checklists, activities, a lot of things you can download for free on there. You just need to give them your email and they'll send it to you. So this is super helpful as well. And we've borrowed from Michael Brandwine again. Look him up, he's great. And it's taking time to identify leadership skills, identify leaders in our life, and then that doing and saying, like we said in the very beginning, teaching them tangible skills. So sorry to go through that quickly, but got to plug our social media. I'm sure you follow.